Welcome to Coffee with Democrats, a sensible platform for progressive conversations. Coffee with Democrats is a grassroots movement dedicated to hearing from Democrats, candidates, legislators, and friends from all political backgrounds who want great conversations. Coffee with Democrats is committed to increase Democrat voter registration and Democrat voter turnout by making voting more exciting and meaningful. And now here's your host of Coffee with Democrats, Kevin Dawson.
Well, hey, there is Representative Provenzano. It's been a long time. There is Representative Ranson. Good to see you again.
Well, hello there. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'll say this. I'm kind of struggling a little bit this morning, but I think you guys understood what was going on this weekend with me. I had a little bit of a COVID issue.
Oh, no.
So it come in on Friday, and hopefully it's on its way out.
Right. Well, thankful
Feeling
for
better.
We're just waiting for Representative Munson to show on. Yep. She's busy.
And as I said to you before, I have to be off by 11:30. I apologize. So.
Oh, no problem. No problem. We're just blessed that you're here with us. And as a matter of fact, if this runs a little bit short for all of us, I think we'll have a very good time.
Okay.
So I do have quite a few questions that we're going to go through today together.
Sure.
Is my screen sharing with you guys, or are you just seeing my face?
Just your face.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it that way for a little while. Well, we're waiting for Representative Munson to come on with us. Just for everybody who's going to be listening to this, this is a recording. We are going to be posting this on September 11th, this afternoon, about 3 p.m., so that everybody can be able to listen to it this evening and give us feedback. You can text us back on our Facebook account, which our Facebook is www.facebook.com. Go to Coffee with Democrats on that and send us a message on that, or you can go to Twitter and go to @CoffeeWithDems and put it on there. This is also going to be put out onto YouTube Live at Coffee with Democrats 7998. So that people can watch it on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and Twitter Live. So if you're watching it on any one of those, you can respond directly to those live indicators as well. Today is a somber day. It's a day of remembrance. It is 9/11. We're all sitting here and in remembrance of what happened, the lives lost in one of the most violent attacks to our civilian population in history, and that took place 22 years ago today. So about this same time, we were dealing with that. I remember that day very well. It was a shocking day, I think, for the entire nation. It was something that I lived through and hope to never live through another day like that again. Wanted to see if you guys had any comments on your experiences on what took place on 9/11 that you don't mind sharing.
Representative Ranson.
I was like, Provenzano. No, it's one of those times where I think we all remember where we were when it happened and the emotions that it caused. But I think it's interesting to recognize that for a lot of our Gen Z citizens, they never lived through it. So they don't have the memory of where they were at the time. For instance, I was actually pregnant with my daughter when it happened. And so, the idea that it's recent history, but for our next generation, it is ancient history at the same time.
Right.
What I do remember is the day after, where everyone came together and everyone pulled together across the nation. And I think that's something that We should never forget the atrocities of that day, but we should also never forget the community and the fellowship and the family where we all came together as a nation.
And that's important. That really is important, because that's where we need to get back to. We need to have that unity again within our nation. And I said that like there's not unity, and there is unity. There's a lot of places we go where we encounter a lot of unity. And I just think that it's time for that to spread, and just, I don't want for something bad to happen for us to have that same conversation with our neighbors and with our family, and be able to set aside some of the extremism that has been taking place. So Representative Provenzano, do you want to share a little bit of a few words?
Boy, I was pregnant with my youngest as well. Imagine that, watching it all unfold on TV and getting reports locally of a plane that was over in Arkansas, and just the fear there. One of the things that we did in this state, I think we were the third or fourth state, a couple of years back, we passed the 9/11 Flag of Remembrance statute, and I got to help out with that. And so there's a particular flag designated to that day that we now have and recognize in the state of Oklahoma. And here in Tulsa, at Tulsa and Union Public Schools, there's entire lesson plans designed around that event. And they bring in a piece of the steel beam, the beams that were found at the World Trade Center, and they often have people that went and volunteered or family members come and speak, and so we don't forget. And so they do learn, because I think the teachers all remember, and it's kind of seared into our brains at this point. We all take off our shoes now at the airport as a result, among many other things, and just kind of comparing and contrasting where we are now as a country. And my heart just kind of aches for what could be and what should be. And I hope that this day kind of reminds us who we are.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I know Trish is not much of a coffee drinker. She likes hers pretty well black. So
no, you got to.
I got that wrong.
No, yes, I'm the latte. I got to have the milk.
That's right. I apologize. I see that Leader Munson has joined in. Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning. Sorry about that. I was actually meeting with students from Rose State College, are here to celebrate Constitution Week, which isn't here yet, but a good day, I think, to come to the Capitol, and a lot of them their first time.
Certainly. Wow. We just got through, and we're going to open up the discussion for you to just have just a couple of moments to talk about 9/11 and your experiences and some of the things that you'd like for us to think about on 9/11, on Remembrance Day of what took place.
Yeah, I think like everybody, I remember exactly where I was and how I was feeling. I was coming out of my first hour. I was in my sophomore year of high school. I was actually on the Palm Squad, and so that was my first hour class. And I just remember our Palm sponsor. She was kind of freaking out. She was, our phones were a little different then, but she was looking at her cell phone and was kind of freaking out, and then said, "There's been a terrorist attack in New York City." And I remember my mind just automatically going to, I need to call my dad, because my dad was working, at this point he was retired from the military, but he worked for a government contractor on Fort Sill. I'm from Lawton, Oklahoma, where Fort Sill is located. It's an artillery base. And I quickly called my dad, and he was trying to call me to tell me everything's okay, everything's fine. Because I remember when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, my mom had that same reaction. I was in third grade then. It's just like we just think all the military bases are being attacked. And so my dad just let me know he was okay. I remember all of us just sort of being confused and then getting to my next hour, and my second hour was pre-AP history. And so, and the schools were actually instructed to turn the TV off. But my teacher did leave it on for a little while, which I'm actually glad. And he did a good job of just sort of navigating the emotions and confusion and everything that was going on in that moment. And after that, I remember the rest of the day just being very confused. And I think everybody, teachers, especially the adults, right? They sort of, I think, understood better than we did as high school students. But I was actually scheduled to go to Washington, D.C. later that week or the week later with a youth like city council type program, and all of that got canceled because we couldn't go to DC. So that would have been my first trip to the nation's capital, and I wasn't able to do it. And so I think ever since then, I have a good friend from high school and just growing up in general. Today's her birthday. And so it's always these mixed feelings. You want to celebrate her and her life, of course. And then we have this tragic event that happened to our country, and really that has rippled across the world. And I see it now in my adult life. I know people who've lost family members. I actually babysat for a little girl. Her family, her mom and dad actually were working at the World Trade Center. They were able to get out, obviously, but so it's just kind of interesting, you know, as you get older, those things that happen when you're younger. So obviously try very hard not to forget what happened on 9/11. Driving into the Capitol, seeing the flags at half mast, just a reminder that we got to do better when it comes to being inclusive and open to each other, and not create so much fear and divisiveness, because look at what can happen. I mean, as Oklahomans, we know what can happen just right at home. And then what can happen, you know, in a place like New York City, and how it impacts the country and the world. I've also been watching a very good documentary by Ken Burns on the Vietnam War. And so my mind today is heavily on war and how war gets started, and what does it actually solve. So that's where my mind is today and where my heart is. And so just trying to be a little more compassionate to myself and towards others. And hopefully we're all reflective today so that things like this don't happen in the future.
Right, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about coffee. This is Coffee with Democrats. And I just insulted Representative Ranson. I forgot her favorite drink. She's a latte person. I just commented that she likes it black, and that's when you joined in. So Representative Ranson, what are you drinking this morning for your daily beverage?
I actually met with a constituent this morning before I drove to the Capitol, and I had a latte. So I am fully caffeinated up for the day. So yeah, I might need to switch to water.
Okay. How about you, Representative Provenzano?
Well, I actually don't drink coffee during the week. I'm trying to cut back. I did have some yesterday, but this morning it is all water. It looks like we have a new visitor on the call, Steve.
Steve Holcomb. He's an attorney. He's my co-founder. So he's a joint. He's invited. So we're
safe.
Yeah, we're safe. We're good. Yeah, I invited him to come on with us, and he can join in as he chooses. I don't think this will take very long for all of us to go through our conversations and stuff, but let's go back just a little bit. Representative Munson, what's your favorite beverage for the morning?
Well, I don't drink my coffee black. I'm not that grown up. I always tell people I still take a little cream and a little sugar. But I've already had my cup. I can only do one a day. If I'm doing more than one a day, I'm jittery. So I've got my bubbly water, bubble water already. But I'll stick to water the rest of the day. But I do like coffee.
So Steve,
my staff will always joke she never finishes her coffee. She likes it, but she doesn't finish it, which is true. I usually leave half a cup cold sitting on my desk.
Well, Steve, what are you having this morning? What kind of beverage did you have this morning for breakfast?
Oh, I have a stovetop espresso maker, and
Ooh.
usually have it in the morning, so it charges me up. And this time of year, I'm pouring that on ice and adding a little cream. So I've already had that this morning, and I'm all ready to listen in on this.
All right.
Little
So I know that we've got to get going here. We've got to get Representative Ranson off of this call here in about 15 minutes. She's got another appointment to go to. So I'm going to just jump right into some of the questions that I have. So just as a background, the entire Democratic Caucus came together about a week and a half ago as a group. Really, you had a press conference. You addressed some issues that were taking place because of this continued rhetoric that our superintendent of public instruction had been putting out. And it led to a very dangerous situation for our students in the state of Oklahoma, particularly in Representative Provenzano's backyard up there at Union and Tulsa, where there was a lot of bomb threats. And then I can't say that it didn't culminate with some bad things that took place down closer to Oklahoma City with the shooting that took place in a football field. So I can't say that those things can't be tied back to some of this rhetoric that's taken place and people wanting to bring violence onto the schools. So let's talk about that event that you guys came together, and then let's just, what brought us to that, and then talk about the event itself. So I'm going to start with, what brought us to that. Again, I've kind of given a little bit of summary, but if you want to add to that, please go ahead. And I'm going to start with Leader Munson, and then from Leader Munson, with your help, you go ahead and direct the next person that you want to comment.
Well, we'll probably go in the order with our press conference. I think that just to kind of highlight just the areas that we've been focused on, but just to for those who maybe haven't seen the news or don't know or didn't watch the press conference, on August 29th, we as a caucus delivered a letter to the speaker with a formal request asking for a bipartisan special House committee to put together members from both sides of the aisle to sit down and start gathering facts and information when it comes to the actions or inactions of our state superintendent. There have been issues that have been sent to us and from constituents and, quite frankly, colleagues from across the aisle. We've had numerous conversations about what is happening at the State Department of Education and have been very mindful and careful about how we approach this issue because, as I mentioned in our press conference, we understand the democratic process. We respect the democratic process. We know that the state superintendent is a statewide elected official. So first and foremost, he is held accountable to the people of Oklahoma. But the legislature does have some authority to step in when it is evident, or we believe it's evident, that as an elected official is not doing their job and taking care of an institution that we are constitutionally required to protect, which is our public education system. He came in January to the House chambers, and his job was to lay out what his budget request would be, what the cost would be to run our public schools across the state and to run his agency. And he was unable to bring that information. His first presentation was, well, here's what the former state superintendent asked for and did. I'll come back with my numbers later. And at the time, Representative Mark McBride, who is the chairman of the Appropriations Committee over Education, and a Republican, mind you, said, what is the point of us having this committee meeting if you didn't come and bring information that we asked of you to bring? So that's really how he kicked off his time and his way of working with the legislature. And then you go throughout legislative session, lots of things have happened around questions around what's happening with employees, are federal funds being applied for? We got to a point where there were so many questions that the House Appropriations and Budget Committee asked the state superintendent to come and answer questions, where I really felt like we didn't use our full authority, power, and enforcement to really get information that we needed from him. We just kind of gave him a 2-hour opportunity to really continue on with his campaign rhetoric. And you hear it from folks, and again, on both sides of the aisle, from both chambers, who've said, stop with the campaign rhetoric, let's do work. how are you taking care of our schools? And so since then, we've heard of lawsuits. The state auditor came out with her audit report. There's a criminal investigation now actively happening that the AG has taken on. And then really what made us feel like, it is now time that we step in and we do more publicly was the bomb threats that were sent to the Tulsa public schools, Union public school area. And I'll let Representative Provenzano talk more about that and outline some more things that we feel like are questionable when it comes to the state superintendent. But we, again, just going back to being mindful and respecting the democratic process, we're simply asking for a committee, a place to bring that information to one place, to have a public discussion, public review, and have public findings. Things that we think may rise to the level of impeachment may not, but we need to make that decision with folks in the room that the speaker puts together. But the speaker and a couple of lawmakers from the Tulsa area spoke out that Friday before we had the press conference, which made me really feel like, okay, we're all hearing from people in our districts. We're hearing from people from across the state, and the speaker and some of these members on the other side of the aisle are willing to speak up. And so if that's the case, then now it's time to move toward action. And so that's where we are today. I mean, so far the answer has not been yes, but we continue to hear from people asking for a committee to be created. And so I'll really stop there, but that's how we got to where we are. That's what we asked for. There's plenty of precedent under this speaker, under his leadership, where he's called special committees. He's created them to investigate agencies and actions of individuals. So it isn't something that is so outlandish or radical or premature is the word that I hear a lot. I think we're at a point now where there are a lot of questions. And quite frankly, since then, there have been more issues that have come out about the state superintendent. And so we really feel like the time is now to have the committee created and have the conversation.
Well, that was a lot. Representative Provenzano, I'll have to concur and agree with Leader Munson here. But the goal in the 8 months now, 8 months, 10 days, 11 days of this gentleman appears to have been, just so chaos, so distrust, and a feeling of unsafety in our schools and quality of schools. And that's the agenda. And when people are like, oh, our schools are failing. No, they're not. But we've constructed this environment to make you think that that's what's going on. And at the time of our press conference, as I mentioned in the press conference, in the Tulsa and Union area, we had 5 straight days of bomb threats in the Tulsa area at multiple schools, homes of teachers, homes of the librarians, that sort of thing. And I had parents reaching out to me going, I'm removing my kid from the school until I know it's safe. And so when you hear that, you think that was the whole to begin with. And it's deeply concerning when, we have a state official sharing disinformation that leads very clearly, in my opinion, to this discord and feeling of lack of security. And, before then, the conversation was all about accrediting. What will our kids do? And I had a teacher reach out to me and say, should I even hang posters on my wall? I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to be here. And so, the concept is flood the zone with chaos, and so you're always looking left, looking right to see what's going to happen next. And since then, it's been very clear. Now we are dealing with PragerU, which we should all be deeply concerned about. But it's just the next thing. Next week, it'll be something else. And, what we want to look at is show us the money. How are the funds that have been appropriated to the State Department of Education being spent? Because that's where we're going to see results. And that's where our biggest concern is what's going on behind that curtain. And, part of the things you heard us say is, there are multiple contracts tied to the State Department of Education that simply aren't being met, signed, filled, completed, and in many cases, leading to hefty fines. One's to the tune of $800,000 that the State Department of Education's budget had to absorb. And it's definitely concerning because those are our dollars but culminating in this federal gears funds investigation, out of the Attorney General's office in partnership with the FBI, who was there on the ground just a couple of weeks ago. And we need to know what is going on with our tax dollars when we're also saying, look over here and be afraid of PragerU, look over here and do this, look over here and do that. Everything going on behind the scenes is what we need answers to. We need numbers on the sheet of how are our dollars being spent, and are they being spent appropriately? Because, in speaking with, several officials that were connected to the State Department of Education, you heard this, we're not even going to know. It's only been 8 months. We're not going to know for a while the sheer extent damage that this individual is causing. And so calling for a bipartisan commission makes the most sense in the world. I'm in a purple district, and I am hearing daily, do something. I'm a conservative Republican, do something about him. I'm a Democrat, do something. Why is the state legislature not acting? And, I just hope that our peers across the aisle will be hearing the same thing, and they are. But there seems to be this fear of inaction. That's kind of where we're stuck. And borderline cowardice, in my opinion. And it's time for us to step up, find the backbones that we know we have, get to work, investigating what's really going on.
Well, Leader Munson and Representative Provenzano said pretty much everything that I would want to say about this issue. But one thing that the Representative Provenzano brought out, she represents a purple district. I represent a purple district. And this idea that, the whole political spin to it, that, the leftist liberals or whatever name they want to call us are out to get to the Republicans. I mean, the Republicans are a super majority in this state. The Democrats are the ones who are speaking up because the superintendent's colleagues are not. And if they are, they're not being public in the way they are speaking up to him and helping him be accountable. He is still in campaign mode, and he's still trying to get outrage, and he's trying people on social media as opposed to being a boss. And if there are issues with personnel that taking the appropriate HR steps, he's not doing that. Instead, he's putting it out on social media, and he's harming individuals. Staff have a right to a safe working environment. Students have a right to a safe learning environment. Parents have a right to know that the choice that they have made for their child is a good choice. And he is causing chaos in this. So the fact that we are asking for a bipartisan committee that to be formed in a way that the speaker has the proper authority to do is not liberal. It is not. It is moderate. Right. And it is holding him accountable. And I think that is a very important thing that we need to be thinking about when we go forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know that you're going to have to jump off, and we really greatly appreciate your comments. We appreciate you being able to be here with us today, and ask that, sometime in the future, whenever we get a chance, would you come back and rejoin us again?
Always. I really enjoy sitting in with you and talking, so I would love to.
Well, and as a fellow Wichitan, I know that we've got a lot in common.
Yes. We all take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that was great that we had that open discussion, and some of the things that I'm looking at that I was writing down some notes in was really we're kind of driving this back to unethical behavior, and also he's spreading controversy and conspiracy through phobia, and this phobia towards teaching and our teachers and our educators, and it's just a very sad state that he wants to focus on that. Owning the liberals, that's 10 years ago. That's not today.
Yeah,
today,
whatever.
They're fully in control of what's going on, and they have to own up to what's going on today. I think that's the message that I'm hearing as well.
Yeah, and our Republican peers, we have so many will tell you, off the record, we know this is all nuts. And honestly, we need them to start standing up. We need them to start not, not being so reluctant to speak out. It's happening in Texas. There are attorney
Exactly.
generals in hot water. And will we let it get that far? What will next week bring? And,
Right.
Again, I'll just reiterate the call of we've got to follow the money with this guy, because it's not going to get better, worse. And we've got to also walk around our schools, because you've heard the survey that, what do you think about public schools? You ask any person on the street, oh, I know that they're struggling, they're this or this. What do you think about your school? I love my school.
Right.
And that's the most telling, piece of data, and we should probably have another entire conversation on another day about what public schools actually do and how successful they are compared to the measure that we have hung around their necks. And so, the A to F report card, don't even get me started, because that's a bell curve with so many F's, so many D's, so many C's, etc. And so, it's time to start seeing our schools for what they are and who they or what they are and what they do versus what other people define them as.
Well, and outside of some of the larger metro areas, the school is the center of the town. It is so important. It's such, an integral part of community. And if, what he's doing is actually putting an atmosphere out there of harm and going to harm our children. So I have this question written down in front of me that I wanted to ask, and I don't know whether it's appropriate or inappropriate to ask this, but what are some of the acceptable outcomes that you desire to have? I know that you kind of listed out some of the things that you want to do, but are there some outcomes that actually would be the most appropriate outcomes?
I would say first, we actually did do one thing that I appreciate Representative Mark McBride doing to his limits bill, which is the appropriations bill that outlines, we appropriate money to the State Department of Education, and then we direct where that money goes. And within that bill, there's language that provided guardrails saying that if the state superintendent, really at this point, regardless of who it is, if they decide not to apply for federal funds, that they would have to actually let the legislature know that prior to making that decision on their own. So I think that was something that we were able to put in place while we were in this last legislative session. But the reason it's really hard to answer that question is because that's the whole point of having the committee, is because we've listed out all these things. We didn't even list out everything else that we hear from, again, superintendents, teachers, former agency employees, those who are within the agency, those kinds of things that if we could have it all collected in one spot, we would be able to make wiser decisions on how we can put some guardrails in place to protect our public schools. But at the end of the day, I actually tweeted about this yesterday. Elections have consequences. When you elect somebody, decisions are going to be made, things are going to happen, and we're living through that right now. The state superintendent, they are not up for re-election every 2 years like the House is. And so it's time for people, I would say, my call to people who are listening, the public who want something to be done, you don't have to wait until 2026. There's an election coming up. There should be 101 of us on the ballot if we're all challenged for the House of Representatives. And something that Representative Ranson brought up and that we've sort of intertwined in everything that we've said is, we have a super majority of Republicans in charge of state government, and they keep highlighting over and over again their inability to hold themselves accountable. It's why we have someone like Ryan Walters as state superintendent. He knows that he can get away with these things. It's not just the rhetoric, it's the mismanagement of funds. It's the things that we as legislators, regardless of party, are required to have oversight over. And so asking your state representative and your state senator, the half that will be up for re-election in 2024, what are you doing to protect our public schools? What policies are you putting in place? How are you working with the Democrats or folks on the other side of the aisle, whichever side, to make sure we're protecting our public schools and lowering the temperature around the rhetoric? And so for now, it's not like we're just saying, impeach Ryan Walters. We're saying put the process in place so we can gather the information, so we can figure out what outcomes would be acceptable and what would be, what would be possible to move through the process. But I think right now, by the speaker either saying no or not responding to our requests, it's actually giving the state superintendent more power to do things that we have concerns about. And I think he'll continue and he'll lean in until he's reined in a little bit by those of us who have the authority to do that.
Yeah, and having appropriate guardrails put up in place around him, would be an acceptable outcome as well. But
one of the things that was recommended to us was require the State Department of Education to submit quarterly reports of all expenditures to the state legislature, to the leaders in both chambers, and so we can see real time, instead of finding out a year from now how things have been done. But you also want to be careful not to put in laws just for one guy, but that's a common sense approach that we could take. We also, and I'm sure you've seen in the paper, just today, the Oklahoma Ethics Commission, is underfunded and overwhelmed the work that they are being challenged to do. So, ethics issues are rampant, and we have 6 people that are charged with, following up to make sure that we're spending money appropriately and that sort of thing. So it seems like there are common sense, bipartisan things that we could do that haven't seen happen yet. So we'll see.
And Steve, you have a question.
Good morning to both of you, Leader and Representative Provenzano. I've not met each one of you before, so I appreciate this opportunity. Leader Munson, you had reached out to Joe Sweden up here in Osage County and asked if I might be interested in providing a place for a function. I'd be more than happy to do so. I wanted to just add that Kevin and I brainstormed Caucus of Democrats a little over a year ago, and he's taken it and made it his own, and I'm so proud of him. But one of the core reasons for doing so was to combat this massive misinformation that we're talking about. You guys are trying to pull the levers that you can pull, and yet this massive misinformation just keeps flowing. And Ryan Walters does not exist in a vacuum.
Right.
And so to the extent that Coffee with Democrats can help with just getting people to run for some of these seats, where we just don't have a Republican primary, and that's it, out here in Osage County or K County, it's just so common. So we want to help with that. Kevin and I do, especially Kevin, and both of us. And we want to try maybe even to rope in some of the county chairs into coming on to Coffee with Democrats, looking at the different congressional districts and kind of starting to talk about 2024 and elections, because as you both emphasize, elections matter. And other than that, as a former prosecutor, I'm thinking you just keep collecting information, you keep working with the police, because I'm old enough to remember David Hall. David Hall went to prison. He was the governor of Oklahoma. And after he left office, they prosecuted him and they put him in prison.
Melissa, go ahead.
For corruption.
You just brought up, and I'll let Leader Munson comment on. Yes, we'll come right up there and visit. But the Tulsa County Election Board reached out to my office last week and said, we have a shortage of poll workers. We did just raise, how much you can get paid for a day as a poll worker, but in particular, we have a shortage of Democrat poll workers, and so it's reaching a crisis level where we're going to have to start combining precincts, and people are going to be confused about where to vote, and that's not something that we want, in particular here in Tulsa and statewide. But so anyone listening, take that day, go vote early and take the day, and also be very aware that with the census and the new redrawing of the maps that the election board also did, they sent those cards out. Do you still live here? And if you didn't respond to that, for whatever trigger, caused you to get that and you didn't respond to it, you've been made inactive. And so you need to go online, make sure you're registered to vote. I had a constituent say, I went to sign up for an absentee ballot and all of a sudden I was having to re-register to vote before I could even get to the absentee ballot, which you can do online now, and you can do, just by printing off the thing. So it's critical that Democrats follow up, because we know that Democrats love to vote absentee. And so poll workers, if you can take the day, please do it. I've done it once just to try it out and see how hard it is. It's not hard.
And we increase poll worker pay. So
Yes.
there's an upside.
Well, I'm one of those Democrats. I vote absentee all the time as well, and that's partly because I'm retired. But I've been an absentee voter for years because of my job. I worked 24 hours. I was on call, didn't know whether I'd be home the day of the election or not. So that was one of the reasons why I got involved in doing that, and I've been a consistent person doing that, no matter what state that I lived in. So we still got about 20 more minutes here. Want to ask just a little bit about. We just finished our session. Back, what was it, in May, and we've got a little bit of period now where we're between sessions. When does the next session actually start? For those people who are looking in, wanting to know when, and it's so when is our next session?
We are in session the first Monday of February through the last Friday of May every year. That is when the Constitution requires us to be in regular session, and then we were in special session this year too. So we were in a concurrent session that started about mid-May, that adjourned sine die July 31st. So, but regular session every year is first Monday of February and until the last Friday of May. What that day is, I do not know at this very moment.
Sure.
The 2nd, the 6th, the 4th, one of those days, whatever that first Monday is.
But you don't have any special sessions coming up. You're
not that we're aware of. I know the governor is he's been out in the media saying that he was going to call for a special session to address possible tax cuts. I haven't really I don't gather that that's really something that legislative leaders in either chamber are really pushing to make happen. But the governor can call us into a special session. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to do exactly we could gavel in and gavel out, which has happened before. So there's always a chance, but I really don't think that will happen. But we are starting interim studies that will kick off next week, or actually, I think a couple will kick off this week. One that, speaking of engaging voters and sort of our processes, the Elections and Ethics Committee in the House will hear a study on ranked choice voting that's scheduled for tomorrow morning, I think at 9 o'clock. So I would encourage folks to get on the House website and look at those schedules. But that's what happens usually during this time, our interim studies, or I like to joke and say our research projects that we do. They're really, if you do it right, they are very helpful to just learn more about an issue, work with your committee to have some dialogue that maybe we're not traditionally able to have during session because things are moving so fast and bills already filed.
So the reason I asked that question, because I knew we were going to be out of session for a little while. Now would be a real good time for people like myself and people who are watching this to contact their local legislator, whether that person be a Republican or Democrat. In most cases, it's going to be a Democrat because we are coffee with Democrats, but there are people on here that are Republicans or independents, or people who haven't even registered will listen into this. And the message that I want to pass on to them, based on what you just told me, is contact your legislator, whether that senator or whether that House of Representative is working as a Republican or a Democrat. Contact that person and have some conversation with them about what you see is going on with Superintendent Walters. If you feel that he needs to be held accountable, again, come forward and start having that conversation. So do we have a couple minutes to talk just a little bit about a few Democrat-led initiatives that you desire to have in place whenever the House goes back in session in February?
Oh, you did.
I know we're like looking at each other like which person should. I'll say, we in the fall we have a retreat where we come together. We'll do that here in a couple months to really finalize what our agenda will be, and that will come out closer to the legislative session. So if we want to revisit and talk more detail on some of those things, I think that would be a great thing for us to share. It can get some of our other members who may be leading on some of those initiatives, but things that we traditionally have been really working toward as a caucus. First and foremost, while we have provided teacher pay raises, we still don't think it's enough. We don't know that, when it comes to retention and keeping our teachers in the classroom, and more importantly, recruiting those to come to the classroom, we still are pretty behind when it comes to paying our teachers well. And then on top of that, paying our support staff. I really hope with the money that we have in surplus that the governor, he says we need to send all that back. I think people would actually appreciate, especially our state employees and then those in our school districts who could really use a pay bump to care for themselves and their families would really go a long way. Something that I think is important as we're talking about education is, we still are pretty behind. Senator Carrie Hicks, I don't know if you've had her on your show yet or not, but she is very good at reminding us that we're still a little over $1 billion behind when it comes to the regional average in terms of funding public education. Our teachers and our students, we're doing well with a little, but I don't think we should continue down that road. So education funding will still be a priority for us until we're to a place where we're truly taking care of our districts and our students. And then, providing a living wage and ensuring that those who are working hourly are actually able to make a living wage so they can afford to live. They don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs on top of the jobs that they're already doing to take care of their families. We see a lot of news coming out right now about affordable housing, people accessing housing. In order to do that, you have to have stable employment, and you have to have, you need to make a wage that allows you to afford rent. I think in Oklahoma City, in order to afford like a $750, $800 apartment, which I think is still pretty hard to find per month, you have to make near $16 an hour in order to afford that. And so we'll definitely be having a conversation on that. And then when it comes to any type of tax cut, one of the issues that we have brought up over and over again is looking at eliminating the state sales tax on groceries. We think that'll go a long way helping our working families. And then looking at the sales tax credit relief, sales tax relief credit, that, various groups have come forward asking us to take a look at. And I don't know if there's an interim study on that this year, but it is certainly something that we think is important. And with tax credits, looking at child tax credits and child care tax credits, how are we helping working families stay in the workforce and take care of themselves and their families? What are we doing policy wise? So those are things that we worked on this last legislative session that we elevated. We'll continue to. Those are some of the high points, but our members will bring things from their own communities that they feel like need to be elevated, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that going into the spring. So
you saw your property value went up, right? And so did everybody's, as well as school districts. Their premiums have increased over the last 5 years by 300% in some cases, and most have doubled. But when thinking about, your property value, just one of the things that I'll be bringing forward. I had one woman that is classified federally as 100% disabled. And in the 5 largest counties in Oklahoma, you can receive an exemption on your property tax if you qualify for this disability category. Well, but only up to $125,000. And so this year, when property values jumped so much in the Tulsa area, at least, she got ticked over that line, you know, and now she has back taxes of $25,000 that she owed by like within a month. And so the community came together and rallied and helped raise funds and paid that. But we need to be very, you know, and that's never been raised since the beginning of having that statute in place. You know, there are things that we can be doing. I mean, shoot, last year we increased the exemption for church personages up to $500,000. You know, $500,000. We can do that. We can do that we can do something for the people that really truly need it as well. I mean, things like that. We all have constituent issues. I'm sorry, Steve. I keep talking over you. Go ahead.
I was trying to get in at the right time. Had a question for Leader Munson, if she's still listening in, and that
I
was
believe so.
A rural issue that has popped up here, and you may all be aware of it, and that's a right to repair.
Yeah.
So you've heard about that. So Colorado, I believe, has passed that, and that just seems like a no-brainer in terms of kind of cutting into, you know, rural Oklahoma and showing that there's an awareness of that by the Democratic Party in the state. So.
Yes, very aware of that issue. And actually, former Representative Republican Logan Phillips actually was working on that issue prior to losing his reelection, and had reached out to some of our members. And so it's something that a couple have been interested in. So I'm glad you elevated that to us, so we can remember. But yeah, actually a bill has been introduced here in Oklahoma. It just didn't make its way through the process. So.
Okay.
We appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
So for just the last few minutes, this is the first time that we've had Leader Munson on with us. And I'd like to kind of finish off our conversation. Melissa's been on before, and we know that she's got a very strong education background. And when we start talking about some of these issues with Superintendent Walters, you know, when you said that you wanted to have Representative Provenzano come on, I was all thumbs up, because I knew that she was such a strong advocate for education. But one of the things I'm kind of messing on is I don't have very much of a biography for Representative Munson. I just wanted to see if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about, you know, your biography. You know, I know what I have read and what I've seen. You've got a very good background, something that I think, you know, I'd be proud to share.
Yeah, who the heck am I? That's a good question. It's probably something we ask ourselves every day. I appreciate that. I'll just start legislative. I've been in the legislature for 8 years. I was elected in a special election in 2015. So I just celebrated 8 years last Friday. Something that people tend to forget is my first election was actually in 2014. I challenged Representative David Dank. I did not obviously win that election, but I did improve the Democratic performance by about 3 percentage points, which is huge. And at that point, we kind of had an idea that the district was shifting. And really, I credit my understanding of campaigns and how to do the work to Representative Dank, because I knew how hard it would be to even, you know, be taken seriously. And so that's where I learned that you have to knock a lot of doors and you have to make a lot of calls and get people to buy into what you're doing, because so many people told me I couldn't do it. And I say, you know, in 2014, they were right, but then an opportunity came in 2015 and we were able to capture the seat. But my background is in the nonprofit sector. I worked for the Girl Scouts of Western Oklahoma. So I served all of Western Oklahoma minus the Panhandle. And I was our community programs and outreach manager. And so I managed a lot of our money that we got from private donors, but also large federal grants that we received and state grants, different monies that we had come into the Girl Scout organization to provide leadership programming for girls who didn't have access to traditional Girl Scouts, like having a mom or grandma or aunt or someone down the street who's running their troops. I was working in county detention facilities. I worked in public schools, which is really the two things that I really care about, public education and dealing with our criminal justice system, came from that experience. And I started working with Eastern Oklahoma Council. We started partnering and working with mothers who were incarcerated to reconnect, because we noticed that Eastern Oklahoma was working with their moms and we were working with the daughters. And so my eyes were really open to generational incarceration and what that looks like. I would have girls tell me, I'm going to Mabel Bassett or Eddie Warrior when I grow up, because that's where my mom is. That's where my grandma is. And it just bothered me so deeply. And I thought, we have got to do more. And that's why I worked for the Girl Scouts. My passion has always been around how do we help women and girls, especially those who have to overcome the greatest challenges that many times society places on them, that policies that have been created that don't serve people. And so, and I couple that with my own life experience. I was raised by a single dad. Like I mentioned, he was in the military. He served 22 years in the Army. He is a Vietnam era veteran. And so, growing up and the financial struggles we've had to overcome. My mother's from Seoul, South Korea. Neither of my parents went to college. My mom doesn't even have an American education. I first to go to college. First one to do this whole crazy thing, getting into politics. And so I feel like my story is a lot more of what Oklahomans' lives are like. And so many of us are told not to do this, not to engage just in the process, let alone run for office. People told me over and over again, I wasn't going to ever win my district, and Democrats even, because I don't have a business background, because I'm not conservative, because I'm not this or that, and we have been able to defy all of those odds by hard work and connecting with people. And I really value connection. I value hard work. I like ending the day looking back and thinking, I did all the things I said I was going to do, and I like setting goals and reaching them. And so I'm doing everything I can as leader to bring that to the caucus. Being leader is a much more difficult job than people think. There's nothing glamorous about it. Melissa and Trish are with me all along the way, so they know the things that we have to overcome and things that fall in the leader's lap that you don't see outwardly. And I feel like I've done an okay job. It was quite a learning curve this first session with everything going on, but a lot of my passion is around education, because I would not be here without my teachers. During the walkout, I saw teachers from kindergarten all the way through high school who are still teachers, and I always start to cry when I think about it, because I'm like, I would not be here without you, and now here you are in my office asking us to do better for public education. What a weird life experience. And then, like I said, criminal justice issues became something I became passionate about when I better understood through my work with the Girl Scouts. And then just taking care of people. The economy thrives when everybody has an opportunity to make a good living and to buy a house and send their kids to college. And people have so much pride in that. And watching my dad put on a uniform, Army uniform, most days of my life, and then he comes home and he changed into a pizza delivery man uniform, or he worked at 7-Eleven, or he delivered the Oklahoman in like Cache Oklahoma and rural Oklahoma around Lawton. I've watched my dad sit at the dining room table, pencil and notebook, every little penny, counting it down. And I live like that sometimes, and I don't want to live like that. I don't want people in our community to live like that. It's very stressful. It's very difficult. And so that's why I tried to elevate the things that I do. Yes, I'm proud to be a Democrat. Most of my values align with the Democratic Party, but it's really my own life lived experience that I feel like I want people to see we're actually more alike than we are different. And there are people here who are trying to fight for those things and tell the people in power, we gotta, you have all the resources here. Let's do something for everyday people. Because at the end of the day, when we take care of them, everything is taken care of. And so, that's who I am. I have a nephew. If you follow me on social media, I'm not married. I don't have kids, but I do have a little nephew named Jude, and he's like my favorite human in the whole wide world. And watching him grow and his curiosity and creativity and innocence, it's bringing back those childlike things in me. And so it makes me want to fight harder. I'm on his PTA. I'm like a little bit of a helicopter aunt, but my sister's glad to have a partner in crime with her. And so we have a PTA meeting tomorrow night. And so things like that take up my time. I like to row and read and jog, and I love Oklahoma history. I actually was in Pawhuska. I saw Steve's law firm from the outside. And so traveling around Oklahoma is one of my favorite things too. Sunrises, sunsets, that's who I am. I like green. Everything's green. You'll notice.
Well, thank you very much for being on Coffee with Democrats today. Can you give us some closing comments or closing remarks that we can close this down with, and appreciate everything that you guys are doing?
I guess the only thing I would add is, just don't give up. Don't give up. I love seeing people like Steve in Osage County and Pawhuska, where people think there's just it's not possible. It is. You got to keep the faith. You got to keep having the conversations and having I like this Coffee with Democrats. I know it's virtual, but doing it one-on-one and trying to keep the connection is what will move us forward. It's not all is lost. I think people are just so isolated and feel like there's no hope, but people like us have to keep the hope and keep moving forward and keep doing things like this.
Melissa?
Yeah, ditto, and go double check your voter registration.
Yes, exactly.
And besides your legislator, your senator, your Republican, reach out to the speaker and let him know you'd like to see that bipartisan commission. He needs to hear it from all across the state. So I hope that the folks listening will do that as well.
Appreciate that. Great. So our next Coffee with Democrats will be this Thursday on the 14th from 10 to 11 a.m. We're going to have Representative Arturo Alonso Sandoval with us. So we're looking forward to that conversation. I also have to bring up one more that is absolutely, I think, is a game changer for us with Coffee with Democrats. We're going to leave politics for a little while on October 3rd from I believe it's 10 until noon. We're going to be having a Coffee with Democrats with the Killers of the Flower. Help me out, Steve.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon. We're actually going to have Chief Gray from the Osage the Osage tribe. He's going to come on with several of the actors with Coffee with Dems, and we're going to do just a session about Native American issues. So that's
that's going to be cool.
Yeah, on October 3rd. It's getting right around the corner, so we're getting geared up for that. Really excited about that opportunity for us. So I want to thank everybody. We need to close this down so that you guys can get back to doing the hard work of the Democrats. And again, thank you so much for coming on Coffee. It's such a great opportunity to just have these conversations and get to know each other. And what I like is that I have not encountered a bad person as a Democrat yet. So
awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Kevin,
Thank
I
you.
need to know, did you just invite you and Joanne to come to Pawhuska? Because I need to let Susie know to make room for you. Is that what you just did with this Killers with the Flower Moon?
I think we're going to have to do something up there because I'd like to do that live and in person with Chief Gray.
Well, I think the Indian Championship Taco, the Taco Championships, that's what it is. That's about the same time. So we'll visit back about that. And by the way, that's a great opportunity to come up into Pawhuska for the National Indian Taco Championships. And it's beautiful. There's the dancing that you will see that you can't see in Wanchka and the other formal dances. And it's competitive and it's very photogenic and highly recommend it.
Is that October 3rd too, or is that a different?
I think, give me a second and we can look it up. National Indian Taco Championships. Let's see here. Looks like it'll be Saturday, October 7th this year.
See what we can do. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed your conversation with us today, and you'll be more than welcome to come back. We'd love to have an extended conversation. I say extend this conversation onto another one down the road. Like you said, whenever you have your retreat, you're done with your retreat, please just let me know, and we'll set up another coffee with Tim's so that we can talk about some of the initiatives that you guys have planned.
Okay.
Until then, thanks everybody, and please be safe. Appreciate
Thank you.